Bradley. I'm a teacher at Salesian College in Sunbury. This is my first year of teaching. I did a Bachelor of Accounting at La Trobe before doing a graduate diploma at ACU last year. So currently I am teaching commerce at Year 10, Year 11 and 12 accounting, Year 11 business management, and Year 10 and 11 health. So included in that Year 10 subject is a subject called Health and Rec, so students are partaking in health activities as well as some sport. Inclusive teaching to me means allowing all students to have their own opinions and have them heard, and to give them their own sense of achievement. So this doesn't mean achieving a set standard 50%. A student's achievement level might be 30%, 40%, 50%, 100%. I think that being an inclusive teacher means that you allow all those students to work together to better one another and then ultimately yourself. I think that I ultimately learn from my students, and that helps me to engage with them and make the environment in which we teach in, so our classroom and the outside areas, a place where everyone feels safe.
Before we dive into inclusive pedagogy, let's define pedagogy itself. Pedagogy is one of the terms you will come across time and time again throughout your teaching degree and career, so a good understanding of what it is vital. According to Teaching Australia 2008, pedagogy is defined as the art and science of educating children, the strategy for using teacher professional knowledge, skills and abilities in order to foster good learning outcomes. So simply, it is how we teach the content to our students, the key word being how. One type of inclusive pedagogy that can be used in HPE is inquiry-based learning. Here is a clip which summarises what inquiry-based learning is and how it differs from traditional teaching.
There is an old saying, "Tell me and I forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand." The last part of this statement is the essence of inquiry-based learning. Students, rather than learning passively from the teacher and memorizing facts, construct their own understanding and knowledge. The concept of inquiry-based learning is something that all of us experience throughout our lives. Growing up, children are continually asking questions in an attempt to make sense of the world. We all want to understand the world around us, or try to figure out how it works, and we do this by asking questions. For example, how are engines able to make cars move? Or why is the sky always grey in Ireland? It is our natural urge to inquire, and during this process we are continually thinking in order to make meaning. Essentially, inquiry-based learning starts with a question. Many of us have grown up learning through traditional methods. In this approach, teachers act as the sage on the stage, passing on information from a textbook to the students in a step-by-step process. Success is then measured in the student's ability to recite this information with a focus on reproducing one correct answer. Inquiry-based learning is more dynamic than this, as it actively involves students in their own learning. Inquiry-based learning stems from John Dewey's constructivist theory that people construct their own understanding and knowledge of the world through experiencing things and then reflecting on those experiences. Constructivists believe that children learn best when they ask questions, investigate solutions, create new knowledge as they gather information, discuss their discoveries and experiences, and reflect on new knowledge. In other words, students' learning is not based on teacher-directed activities, That's just recall, but rather they are learning the skills to synthesize, interpret, and evaluate information.
On my placement at Dandenong Valley STS School, inquiry-based learning is something I witnessed during a basketball physical education session. This was the first session of basketball for the term, so the teacher asked the students what they felt were the important aspects of basketball they should learn before they were ready to play in an inter-school sports tournament the following semester. This allowed the students to take direction of their learning despite having a disability. Although this is not an in-depth inquiry-based project, the students were given a choice that was in line with their mental capabilities. This initial question fostered group discussion, questioning, and eventually a list of important skills and rules, as well as how they might learn these. In a more traditional approach, students would have been told what they were going to learn at the beginning of the lesson in a direct instructional approach. Another type of pedagogy is collaborative learning. Collaborative learning is an educational approach to teaching and learning that involves groups of students working together to solve a problem, complete a task, or create a product. Collaborative learning is based on Vygotsky's model of learning in saying that knowledge can be created in a population where members actively interact by sharing experiences. So instead of separating students, we group them together. It fosters interpersonal group skills, positive interdependence, individual accountability, group processing, and communication skills, which can transfer into real-life situations, making this form of learning authentic. In groups, students can learn faster, understand better, apply the knowledge, and generate in-depth ideas. In a PE context, collaborative learning can be utilised in many ways. One particular example is through the use of creative games, which I will discuss later in this video. This also demonstrates how pedagogy is interrelated with curriculum. There are several alternative inclusive HPE curriculums. However, I'm going to focus on two of these and how they link to the Australian curriculum for HPE. Firstly, let's take a look at the alternative curriculum known as Youth Action. Youth Action is an engaging, inquiry-based unit that empowers young people to understand and develop health and physical activity opportunities within their schools and wider community. The aim is to generate outcomes which go beyond the classroom and into the community. So students ask these questions. Number 1, what does movement mean to you? This involves reflection about what students enjoy about movement. Number 2, what movement happens in your area? Here students create maps, highlight issues, and consider socio-cultural issues, barriers, and regulations. This is also an opportunity to integrate ICT into the HPE classroom. Number 3, how do you want to move? Students identify movements they would like to do more of and issues they may want to tackle. Number 4, what resources, evidence, or information do you need? Students gather data and analyse their issue. They consider a planned response. And number 5, students present their case for change. Here students will pitch their final ideas to relevant stakeholders. In relation to the Australian curriculum, Youth Action lines up with much of what is stated. For example, in regards to the general capabilities, Youth Action has the potential to meet all 7. It also targets sustainability, which is one of the 3 cross-curriculum priorities. It also looks specifically when you're looking specifically at Band 7 to 8 in the HPE learning area, Youth Action can target both the personal, social and community health strand as well as the movement and physical activity strand. Another alternative curriculum I would like to look at is creative games. In simple terms, creative games is a class project in PE. It involves multiple inquiries into multiple topics all connected through being an engaging teammate. As a team, students are faced with the challenge of creating a game to play in a season of games. Here is a step-by-step breakdown that will give you a better understanding of what creative games is. So, firstly, the teacher divides the class into 4 mixed groups. They then consider what makes a good team and what represents being a good teammate. They each design a game. They play the games in the class and reflect, review, and refine each of these games. Together, they establish a class game which is a combination of all the best aspects of each of these games. They then develop a season using this class game. This differs from a traditional approach to HPE teaching in that it is not purely focused on competitive games. Although these games created may reflect aspects of competitive games, the competitive nature is not the main focus, and the way in which the class game is taught will take on a game sense approach. Eliminating the traditional competitive game nature of PE and moving on from traditional sports makes the creative games approach an inclusive one. That is, not specific to one student but caters and includes all the students in the classroom. In relation to how creative games links to the Australian curriculum, it meets the general capabilities, critical and creative thinking, and personal and social capability. It also meets several aspects in the HPE learning area. For example, in the 7 to 8 band, creative games meets the following strands and substrands. Ultimately, these two alternative curriculums provide teachers with a way of meeting the requirements of the Australian curriculum in a way which is inclusive, engaging, and creative. Quality assessment practices in HPE should focus on intended student learning, be authentic from a learner's perspective, be inclusive in construction and enactment, and be defensible in relation to validity and reliability. Currently, traditional HPE assessment approaches have been product-orientated, focusing on components of fitness, or decontextualised as in the case of assessment of isolated skills. Some examples of traditional assessment include testing of rules, tactics and history, grading, attitudes, efforts, participation and attendance, and product focus, as well as interest in student management rather than the specific learning itself. The problem with these traditional approaches are that they are often dated, they involve comparison of students, they generally focus on a particular kind of ability, therefore usually only on a particular kind of student. They are teacher-centred rather than student-centred, they reinforce stereotypes, and they measure only ability rather than any other specific areas. For assessment to have a learning focus, the where and how of learning must be considered. This is the interrelationship between curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment. In creating inclusive assessment, there are some key principles we need to consider. These include establishing the learning objectives, enabling students to determine what they want to focus on. It needs to be individualised, it needs to look beyond tactical and technical knowledge, it has to have a variety of assessment modes, it needs to be connected to curriculum and pedagogy, and it needs to be authentic. This is one of the key points that I would stress to you, that the assessment needs to be authentic. According to Shepherd 2000, authentic assessment refers to connectedness to the world. That is, the learning experiences have meaning to the students' lives and that the knowledge and processes being assessed are utilised in real-life contexts. Examples of authenticity in practice include TGFU and tactical games approaches, where the focus on game performance is in its context with assessment and focuses on the tactical awareness, decision-making and contextually appropriate execution of sports skills. Another example is sport education, which is the development of tasks linked to various roles. For example, students might take on a coaching, captain or umpire's role. So having spoken about some examples of traditional assessments and the problems with these assessments, we now need to consider alternative forms of assessment. So some examples that you might like to include in your classrooms include journal writing, portfolios, videos, creative dances, group projects, creation of fitness programs, or organising a HPE week at school. The list is ultimately endless, however, I encourage you to think outside the box when planning assessment and to ensure that all of your assessment is specific to individuals' needs, rather than creating one specific type of assessment that caters to one specific type of student. In regards to my 10-hour placement at Dandenong Valley School, I didn't actually witness any assessments in action. However, in saying this, in order to be inclusive in assessment, teachers at this school would definitely not be using a traditional assessment approach, simply due to the fact of the students' inability to comprehend such tasks such as tests. Assessments would involve progress from initial motor skills to current levels. It would also involve things maybe such as creative dance or simply a group discussion with students, as long as the assessment caters to the specific needs of the individual. Something else which is really important to consider if you want to teach inclusively is knowing how to organise an inclusive classroom. In my opinion, this is something that is often neglected by most teachers as they feel it doesn't really add educational value. However, studies suggest that a well-designed classroom helps the day run much more smoothly and can even optimise student learning. So key points that you need to consider when organising this classroom is the physical layout of the inclusive classroom. This includes access to and around the classroom, the lighting, the table height, the number of chairs, the number of tables, and the arrangement of furniture around the classroom. Another key consideration is the seating plans. So teachers need to consider whether they want to group students in ability groupings, if they want heterogeneous groupings, and also the seating plan itself, they can lend themselves to a traditional style where students sit in rows facing the teacher versus a more inclusive approach where a combination of different seating styles are used within the classroom. So as we can see in this diagram here, in the bottom left corner, we have the more traditional approach where students will be sitting around the teacher. So they'll be sitting next to each other and the teacher will direct from the front of the classroom. So this here lends itself to students who are more verbal or auditory learners. In the bottom right corner, we have a large instructional area where students will sit in chairs and the teacher can instruct in a less formal approach. Above this, we have a small group area where students work in table groups. This lends itself to more collaborative type learning, group discussion and communication. And then in the top left corner, we have the couch and lounge area where students can reflect and relax in a different environment about what they have learned throughout the day. This particular layout here is something I definitely witnessed on my 10-hour placement at Dandenong Valley SDS School. So Dandenong Valley SDS School is a special school located in the southeast of Melbourne. So this school, most classes did have this particular layout, and in these classes I felt that the couch and lounge area was of particular benefit to teachers, especially when students were presenting with challenging behaviours. This area allowed teachers to send students to this area where they could reflect on their behaviour and then later join the class at a later stage. They also had all their tables grouped in small group areas. So this allowed students to work together where they could practice on their communication skills, which is very important with special students, and also gave them the opportunity to discuss their work not only with peers but also with a teacher who would walk around to each table. They also had this large group instructional area with chairs at the front of the classroom in front of a smartboard, where at the start of the day the teacher would talk to the students about the plan for the rest of the day. So these are just some small changes that teachers can make in the classroom. The biggest thing that I would encourage you to take home from this small segment is to use a combination of these different approaches in the classroom rather than sticking to what most teachers do these days, which is teaching from the front of the classroom and having students listen to what is being said.